So now that Turki Alasheik has made these fight offers to Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, and Teofimo Lopez, you now have created this place where they no longer need Gervonta Davis. So for those of you that don't know, Gervonta Davis has been pretty adamant about not joining Turki Alasheik and all of the Riyadh season events, but with that, he's kind of getting left behind. To me, I actually find it interesting that Ryan Garcia was always deemed to be the weakest one out of the four kings, yet he seems the most likely to end up fighting all four. So for those of you that don't know, back in the day, we always talked about, the four kings being Ryan Garcia, Tank Davis, Devin Haney, and Teofimo Lopez. Up until this point, Ryan Garcia has fought two of them. And while we all know the controversy surrounding Ryan Garcia and Gervonta Davis when it came to their fight, with the rehydration clause and the catch weight, then we're obviously all aware of the controversy as well with Ryan Garcia's fight with Devin Haney regarding the use of Osterring and all that kind of stuff. But regardless of what happened in that fight, Ryan Garcia did, actually show up and fight both fighters. He got knocked out against Tank Davis, and he won, that controversial decision that has now been overturned against Devin Haney. So, again, it kind of surprises me that Ryan Garcia was the one that we all consider to be the weakest, yet he's the one that's actually stepping up to the plate. And I also find it extremely interesting that, people try to make fun of Devin Haney, especially after these losses. And while I don't agree with what he did in regards to the lawsuits and things like that, and I don't agree with what Bill Haney does for the most part, but I think that Devin Haney, the fighter, has shown that he's willing and able to step up whenever he needs to. And also that Garcia fight, we'll give him some kind of credit. He, was willing to get up after multiple knockdowns and really showed, the heart of a champion. With Teofimo, I think he just has a lot of controversy going on right now, but he's also shown the ability and willingness to fight the best. He was the first one out of the four kings to beat Vasily Lomachenko, and he also beat him the most convincingly. He also beat Josh Taylor, and while some people don't consider that a good win, I, for one, do. And keep in mind that both Vasily Lomachenko and Josh Taylor could have still been considered undisputed when Teofimo fought him, and so at the time, Teofimo was fighting the best available fighter in each one of the divisions that he was fighting in. The way that it works, right? So typically in these different weight classes, boxing fans pick out who the best fighters are, and it's usually the most popular, right? So we'll say that, in this scenario, it's Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, Tank Davis, and Teofimo Lopez. They grew up together. And so they were looked at as okay, these guys are going to have to fight. They're probably going to give us the best matchups. And so they mix and match them in whichever way they can. But the issue up until recently with Turki Alasheik, who's this outside entity that came and invested billions of dollars in the sport, up until recently, these guys all fought for different promoters or different companies. So Tank Davis was with the PBC, and they don't like to do business with people outside the PBC. Ryan Garcia was with Golden Boy, and Oscar De La Hoya, who's his promoter, hates the PBC for the most part. Teofimo Lopez was with Top Rank, and Bob Arum, who used to manage both Oscar De La Hoya and Mayweather, they both hate Top Rank and vice versa. And then Devin Haney was with DAZN, a fourth person. So these four were the best fighters, but there was no way we were going to see them fight because they were all with different companies, and it's you're not going to make any money off of me. So up until recently, this guy Turki Alasheik that I've been talking about, he came in, he's pumping so much money into boxing that people find it hard to say no. So Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, Teofimo have all gotten on the Turkey bandwagon, and they're all willing to make the fight. But Tank Davis is sitting on the side, and he's sticking with the PBC, and he doesn't want to engage in any of these things. So far he's only fought Ryan Garcia, but that's because at the time it was the biggest fight that could be made. So it's fucking weird. It's just really weird stuff. But anyways, where was I at? Personally, I think Tank Davis would win a fight against all of them, but it doesn't matter what I personally think if these fights are never going to happen. And I think that's what's frustrating me about this whole situation. It's clear that Turki Alasheik has come into boxing and is trying to make the fights that we want to happen for the most part. And with all this schedule lining up for 2025, especially with Canelo fighting Crawford, for example, like, it's clear that we're going to see the big fights happen this year. And I understand that Gervonta Davis has a lot of pride and a lot of ego and that he's making money on his own. But when he makes comments like, oh, people can only make money if they go to Turkey and they can't sell here in the US. Well, I beg to differ, because it's like both Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, and Canelo, they all make more money than Gervonta Davis, and they all went to the Ring Awards too. So it's just a weird like take, I think, that Gervonta has to like not even be willing to negotiate. And I understand wanting to stay loyal to your promoter and that kind of stuff, but like Mayweather didn't stick with Top Rank, he left and did his own thing. Oscar didn't stick with Top Rank, he left and did his own thing. Even Manny Pacquiao towards the end, he left Top Rank, didn't stick with them, and left and did his own thing. Which, on a side note, Timothy Bradley again coming at Canelo with some weird takes about him bending the knee to Turki Alasheik, which is weird to me because it's like his favorite fighter in Crawford literally follows Turki Alasheik around, and almost like a pet, he like parades him around, brings him to UFC fights, brings him to negotiating tables, is always like on the phone and in pictures with Turki. And I actually think it's pretty cool that Crawford has a friend at that level that he can rely on, and I'm talking about Turki, where it's like he can reach out to him when he needs something and kind of have like someone to support him and back him up. So I don't see anything wrong with it, but what I'm saying is the hypocrisy that Timothy Bradley has for specific fighters with like when it comes to Turki Alasheik, I think is interesting. But I digress. So when it comes to Gervonta Tank Davis, it's obvious he's the money man in the division. I would say Ryan Garcia is probably the second follow-up there, and then following that would be like Devin Haney and Teofimo last, especially with his contractual issues. But I think that none of that matters in this particular situation, because Turki has shown that the money's going to be there for the matchups, and as long as you fight, you're going to get compensated well, and you don't have to worry about your legacy taking a hit. A lot of these fighters that are appearing on these Riyadh cards, you're seeing them come back time and time again. So we're seeing a big mix of different matchups that could happen across multiple divisions, and I think that the younger generation of fighter is finally starting to realize that they can participate in this. So obviously they're going to risk their record, but they're not going to risk their legacy. They're definitely not going to risk their fighting purse. So it's like you might as well participate in some of these big events. And not only that, but it also makes you more popular. So in the long run, it's probably going to make you more money. Now, I guess the fear with some boxers would be if they're not that good to begin with and they're afraid of facing competition that would be at their level. But I think for the most part, these fighters that think they are who they are, I think that they're going to be willing to step up to the plate. But, when it comes to, again, Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, and Teofimo, at this point, if they all face each other, they're not going to need Gervonta Davis for their legacy. And unfortunately, Gervonta Davis, while I don't think his resume is as bad as people make it out to be, like the Mario Barrios win was good, but it had that rehydration clause, right? The Pitbull win was good, but, it had, that short week turnaround. And that applies to both fighters. The Urocas Gamboa win, a lot of people consider a good win, but Urocas was, past it. The Leo Santa Cruz win is a good win, but, you brought up Leo Santa Cruz. There's all these little clauses and things and stipulations when it comes to Tank. And so I think that while building the superstar, they were holding back on his legacy. And, maybe Gervonta lashing out recently is him being upset with the business of boxing because his legacy is not where it should be. And while I personally think, again, I can't reiterate this enough, I think Gervonta Davis is the best fighter out of all of them. I think he beats them all. The odds would be pretty heavy for me. It's significantly heavily leaning towards Tank Davis in all these matchups. But it doesn't matter what I think if he's not going to fight. So when it comes to the three paths for Ryan Garcia, for Devin Haney, and for Teofimo Lopez, I think it's clear at this point that Teofimo is probably going to have the hardest lineup, which I find to be interesting. So when it was announced that Ryan Garcia was going to be fighting Pitbull Cruz, I thought, okay, that's a little tougher of a matchup than Devin Haney versus Ramirez. But now that it's been revealed that Ryan Garcia is going to be fighting Rolly Romero, I think that for this first round of fights, Ryan Garcia is probably going to have the easiest fight. So it's clear that Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero have sparred before in the past. And if you've seen the footage, while Rolly was able to get off some shots, I think that overall he's susceptible to the left hook, and that's probably going to be his downfall. He's also shown to be kind of chinny as of late, and so I don't think he'll be able to stand against the speed and the power of Ryan Garcia. When it comes to Devin Haney, I actually like the Jose Ramirez matchup, and I know that people are saying that Ramirez just came off that loss against Barboza, but it wasn't like a terrible loss. It's not like he got completely dominated, washed, knocked out. Previous to that, Jose Ramirez had only lost against Josh Taylor, and that was during their undisputed fight. So, he's been a unified champion. I think it's a fair fight to have when it comes to, Devin Haney's comeback. By the time they're fighting, he'll be out of the ring for a little bit over a year. Dealing with the trauma of all those knockdowns can weigh heavy on a fighter. So as far as tune-ups go, I think that that's, more than enough that you can ask for on Devin Haney's part. But when it comes to Teofimo, I actually think that he's probably going to get the hardest lineup because his expectation is to fight Richardson Hitchens, which I think is going to be a good fight. I wouldn't call it a 50-50 fight. I think Teofimo has more big-time experience, so I'd probably, have it at 65-35. But then after that, he has to fight Boots Ennis, which is obviously probably going to be the most impressive win out of all these different fights. Moving on to the second round for Ryan Garcia and for Devin Haney, should they win the fights that they currently have, which isn't a given? I think it's a given for Ryan. I don't think it's a given for Devin Haney. I think he has the most questions he needs to answer when it comes to his comeback fight. But should they win, then we have, Ryan Garcia fight Devin Haney. We have Teofimo fight Boots Ennis. And the winner between both of those matchups will face the winner in the other matchup, and the losers will face one another, which I think is an interesting way to have this like mini tournament. And again, it kind of goes back to my point where Turkey's offering these guys legacy and money regardless of whether they win or lose. And so the only loss that they could have is on their records. Like, it's a good fight. You're going to get good money. The fans are going to enjoy it. And it's a win-win across the board. So with that being said, if all these fighters go through their, expected fights, then they're going to have legacies that don't require the Gervonta Davis name in it, which is a shame because, again, Gervonta is probably the best fighter out of all of them. And I'd hate to not see him fight at least one of, the additional four kings. But with that, Teofimo's probably, again, going to have the hardest lineup because he's going to have to face, the winner or the loser of Devin Haney and all that. But with that being said, I do expect, Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, and Teofimo to make it out of their first round fights, but I don't know if they're going to be making it out, the second round. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. I guess the most important thing with this is that we're finally seeing the matchups, and boxing fans have very little to complain about. So until next time, thank you guys for tuning in to The Fighting Post.